Today we are going to be witnessing a performance. So this is a creative expression of some historical research that's been done over, I guess, a couple of years. We're going to be looking at the incident of the Panama Maru. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. There's a description in your programs. But you're going to witness what happened in this legal challenge and what the outcome was. And through this, you'll also get a chance to witness some of the history of the Indian community. So I also wanted to go over a few administrative details before we begin. One is just a reminder, could you please turn off your cell phones? Another reminder is just that when we start the production, no flash photography because that maybe startles some of us. And bathrooms. So unfortunately, there's no bathroom on this floor. So if you do have to go to the bathroom, you'll have to exit and ask one of the volunteers to take you downstairs in the elevator. The bathrooms are downstairs at the gift shop. Okay? The performance should run maybe about 30 to 40 minutes. And then after the performance, there will be time for dialogue, a conversation we would like to have with you. And that will be led by Will Weigler. And then there will be a reception. And there's some yummy food, samosas, and tea. So that's sort of the layout of today. Before we launch into this, I just want to take a moment to thank some key people. First of all, I just want to let you know that something like this doesn't just happen organically. It takes a lot of collaborative effort. And this came about in a matter of 2 months. And really, we pulled through and decided to do something that was going to be more of a creative way to express some historical research. So we appreciate you being our guinea pigs in a way of this production. I want to make mention of your program. There's a list of people that we wanted to thank. I can't name everyone, but it's in your program, and I just want to express on behalf of the class and all of us part of this that we're so thankful for all the involvement and the support of many departments at UVic, including the theater department and other outside groups. Okay? Now, on another level, personally and from the class and those involved in the performance, we want to acknowledge the help of 2 very important people. This would not have been possible today without the unwavering support and vision and perseverance and like, we can do this, don't worry, of John Price. John Price is an ally of our community. He goes above and beyond. So, just to recognize that. And then, to bring out this creative performance, because we're history students and academics, what do we know about acting, right? We needed a community person who had some background in theater. So Will Weigler, who's a... And then you'll see the list of cast. We have some history students taking on the role of acting, and we also have some theater students who are part of this performance. So it was a real collaboration of a number of people coming together. And we also have a few community members that you're going to hear from that are reflecting the histories of some other
am not Canadian. I am not an Indian. I am from the Nuu Nation. I will not let the government tell me who I am, and I will not let them take my children. I have brought my children here to protect them from residential schools. Our children are being stolen from our homes and placed in these schools. They can't speak our language. They can't speak to their families. They are all experiencing emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Over half the children who go to residential schools will be killed. There are 5 residential schools in and around Vancouver Island, 4 of which are located in the north. That's why I have brought my children here. I can keep them safe. I can protect them. There's also a potlatch ban. The government has criminalized the practicing of our cultures. We find ways around it, but we lose a little all the time. This is what they want. Even though there are treaties here, in 1903, the Songhees were displaced from the Victoria Area Reserve by special act of Parliament. Their reserve in the Inner Harbour was seen as an eyesore and too valuable for Indians. A delegation of BC chiefs went to England to see King Edward to discuss the land question. More and more land is being taken from our territories. We cannot practice our culture. We cannot parent our children. We cannot have a presence here anymore. Canada is simultaneously legislating to keep immigrants from coming to Canada and getting rid of this Indian problem, to keep Canada white.
My name is Lee Kwong Wai, and I live in Chinatown with my wife and my children. Since coming to Canada, I have worked hard and have not caused any trouble for the city. It has given me great honor to have the chance to raise my family here. However, each day my family and I are faced with such hardships since we do not have the same opportunities as others that live in the city. Since I came to Canada, I have seen how laws are passed that took away our right to vote and restrict us from entering professions such as law, medicine, pharmacy, or teaching. The government of Canada, the province, and this city has done everything it can to ensure that we do not feel welcome here. When you wanted to stop us from coming to Canada, you tried to deter us by making us pay different taxes, starting with the head tax that started at $10 and then increased to $50 the following year. Then, when it did not deter us from coming to Canada, it was raised to $100, and then 3 years later, increased again to $500. I wonder if in the future, you may be closing the door completely to those wanting to come to Canada. I have been asked to speak here today because we feel that the only opportunity to improve our lives and to give opportunities to our children is to demand the right to vote. So I, along with a few of my friends, have been working to get a petition signed, which I have in my hand today. And this petition has almost 500 signatures so far from Victoria residents, many of them born in Canada. We will write to the Prime Minister, to Prime Minister Gordon, to demand that right to vote. We are hard-working citizens, and as well, we are taxpayers, and we object to our rights being unjustly taken away. Individuals that have signed this petition are individuals such as Mr. Chow Soon. Mr. Chow and his wife have 8 children, and they are all hard-working individuals. Mr. Chow owns a shoe store that makes and repairs shoes. Many of his customers are those who rely on their boots for their trade, and many workers that are building your railway come to rely on Mr. Chow's business. Many of the names on this petition and signatures have made this city, this country, their new home, and would like the opportunities that many others enjoy. It is our hope that one day we will be able to vote in all elections that take place. And even in the future, maybe, just maybe, one of our children or grandchildren may even be able to run for office.
Well, it's been quite a while since I was in the Supreme Court of BC. 113 years to be exact. I came to Canada in 1883. I worked as a fisherman to support my family. In 1896, I got the franchise. I got the naturalization to become a Canadian citizen. So I thought. But even though I had the papers to be a British subject, I wasn't allowed to vote. So I thought I'd do something about that. I went down to the polling station to register, but they wouldn't register me. So I took them to court. And guess what? I won. Yes, the court ruled that the BC government could not discriminate. Here, let me read you a bit of what the judge wrote. The residents within the province of large numbers of persons, British subjects in name, but doomed to perpetual exclusion from any part in the passage of legislation affecting their property and civil rights, would surely not be to the advantage of Canada and might even become a source of national danger. But the BC government wouldn't give up. They appealed that ruling all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. And at each level, the appeal was rejected. But the BC government was very persistent. They went across the waters to London to appeal to, what's that called? Oh yes, the Privy Council. They appealed to the Privy Council. I was taken aback. And you want to know what they argued? They argued that since women were not allowed to vote, that the BC government should not be forced to give the vote to Japanese who became naturalized citizens. And the Privy Council upheld that view and overruled the Canadian courts. So in the end, I lost. But even though I didn't have the right to vote, I had a pretty good life in Canada. My wife Matsu and I had 8 children. We had our community, and we lived by the ocean. That was until 1942. So I just hope you have better luck with your case tonight.
Who are you?
Me? Oh, I'm Homa. Tobichichi Homa. My friends call me Tony.
By 1913, BC had become a white man's country, not by chance, but by design. For the British Colonial Office to Ottawa and Victoria, men such as Joseph Chamberlain, BC Premier Richard McBride, and Prime Minister Robert Borden promoted white supremacy. Yet, First Nations and Asian communities displayed remarkable resilience in the face of much adversity. And some whites, such as the Presbyterian minister L.W. Hall from Victoria, were not afraid to speak out and challenge men like McBride. If we take ourselves to distant shores, if we transcend colonial boundaries, we can hear voices of another past, always present, but seldom heard.
Whatever good there may be in the Oriental, his ideas are not those of white civilization, nor can East and West ever assimilate.
I have spent a great deal of my time among the Sikhs of Victoria, and I strongly feel that they have been unjustly treated by a society which has misunderstood the nature of their presence here in Canada.
The result of an unrestricted immigration of Asiatics could only be gradual extermination of the whites and the absorption of the country by the yellow or brown races, an end which no patriotic citizens of the empire can view with equanimity.
The Sikhs are loyal citizens, intelligent, successful and law-abiding, and deserving of moral treatment by the Canadian government.
I have spent much of my time as Premier tirelessly working to fulfill the expectation of my province by refusing to allow Ottawa to place its imperial reasons before the well-being of the Anglo-Saxon citizens by allowing Hindu immigrants to continue flowing into British Columbia.
But their language is different, and their customs foreign. They obey one God as Christians do, and the Sikh home life and moral code are near identical to those of the Christian.
The province's climate is not suitable for the natives of India, and furthermore, our labor market does not have room for them. I have received letters from workers complaining that the Hindus' cheap labor threatens their jobs and would be remiss in my job as Premier if I stood by and allowed white men to lose their jobs to Asiatics.
Therefore, barring their immigration only undermines moral family life by forcing them to live without their wives and children in their new country.
Beyond this, I must look out for the social and cultural well-being of my province. I know that Asiatics are quite unfit for immigration to Canada.
The separation of families enforced on the East Indians of British Columbia is uncivilized. It is contrary to every moral instinct and jeopardizes the sanctity of the family.
There are too many insuperable difficulties in making them a homogeneous part of our population. Their language, religion, and culture are inassimilable and alien, and therefore their presence is a detriment to Canadian cultural unity.
It is our Christian duty to support the Sikhs in establishing moral lives in their new country, and this cannot be done while we bar them from living in the company of their loved ones.
By 1913, a few thousand settlers from India had arrived. Among the newcomers, many were Sikhs, but also Hindus and Muslims. The communities came together in the Sikh temples, the Gurdwaras, built in Vancouver, Victoria, and Abbotsford. The Gurdwara in Victoria, built in 1912, became the organizing center to protest federal government immigration policies and local discrimination. In the communities, there were both reformers and revolutionaries. Some, like Bhagwan Singh, saw the future in the overthrow of the British rule in India. Others, such as Sundar Singh, hoped for respect for their status as British subjects of the Crown. Regardless, they often worked together. On October 17, 1913, the Panama Maru arrived in Victoria carrying 56 newcomers from India. 17 were allowed to land, 39 were denied and ordered deported. From the day of their arrival, community activists were there to support them. In Victoria, Dr. Sundar Singh, Kartar Singh, along with some white allies, the Reverend L.W. Hall and Isabella Ross Ford, intervened. From Vancouver came Hussein Rahim, a Muslim activist and member of the Socialist Party of Canada. With him came J. Edward Bird, a lawyer and fellow member of the Socialist Party of Canada. Among immigration officials, William Hopkinson was at the fore. By the time he had finished, immigration boards had rejected appeals by the 39 who had been detained. The deportation on November 19th of Bhagwan Singh, despite written court orders for his release, signaled immigration officials' determination to dispense rough justice to those who spoke out.
Isabella Ross Broad. Since moving to British Columbia from Ontario, I have been deeply grieved to find that so many maintain such an unchristian-like attitude toward Sikhs. It is my humble hope that I may be of some service in helping to a better understanding of the claims of our brothers from the East.
मैं सुंदर सिंह कनाडा ਦੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਭਾਰਤ ਵਾਸੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਵਿਕਟੋਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਦੋਸਤਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਹ ਗੁਜ਼ਾਰਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਇਹ ਪਟੀਸ਼ਨ ਪੂਰੇ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੋਲੰਬੀਆ ਰਾਜ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਾਸ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਤੇ 6000 ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹਾਂ। ਇਹ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਲੋੜ ਨਾਲੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਪੜ੍ਹੇ ਲਿਖੇ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਫੌਜ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਡਲ ਤੇ ਸਤਿਕਾਰ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕਰ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਹਨ।
Government officials in Ottawa have rashly devised laws causing great injustices to Sikh people, our fellow British citizens of the Commonwealth.
ਮੈਂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਆਉਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਈ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਮੇਰੀ ਇਹ ਦਰਖਾਸਤ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੱਖਪਾਤ ਦੀ ਨਿਗਾਹ ਨਾਲ ਨਾ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਤੇ ਆਮ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਦੀ ਇੱਜ਼ਤ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਵੇ। ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਗੁਜ਼ਾਰਿਸ਼ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਰੱਖਦਾ ਹਾਂ।
The most pressing restriction that these British subjects from India are asking to be changed immediately is the regulation forcing the wives and children of those Hindustani men to remain in India when they immigrate.
ਪਹਿਲੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਰੂਲਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਪੱਖਪਾਤ ਹੈ। ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਬ੍ਰਿਟੇਨ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਰਾਜ ਤੋਂ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਉਣ ਦੀ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਆਉਣ ਲਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਨਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਅਪੀਲ ਕਰਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਆਉਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਹੱਕ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ।
Separating these families as such is contrary to every human instinct. Family life is the very foundation of the British Empire as a whole.
ਇੱਕ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਲਿਆਉਣ ਤੋਂ ਮਨਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਸਰਾਸਰ ਗਲਤ ਹੈ। ਜੇ ਇੱਕ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਦਾ ਭਾਰ ਚੁੱਕ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਲਿਆਉਣ ਦੀ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ।
Our Queen Victoria, King Edward and King George of India stated that all members of the Commonwealth are to be treated alike. This unequal treatment happening today is unjust.
ਆਖਿਰ ਇੱਕ ਹਿੰਦੂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਜਨਮ ਸਥਾਨ ਤੋਂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਆਉਣ ਲਈ ਸਿੱਧੀ ਕਿਸ਼ਤੀ ਲੈਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਦਾ ਰੂਲ ਹੈ? ਹਿੰਦੁਸਤਾਨ ਤੋਂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੀ ਕੋਈ ਕਿਸ਼ਤੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ। ਇਹ ਸਰਾਸਰ ਗਲਤ ਹੈ। ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੁਈਨ ਵਿਕਟੋਰੀਆ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵਾਅਦਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਰਾਬਰੀ ਦਾ ਹੱਕ ਮਿਲੇਗਾ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਬਰਾਬਰੀ ਦਾ ਹੱਕ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਰਵਾਂਗੇ।
Let us join the voices of the churches in Canada and reach Ottawa in such a way that this wrong can be righted.
ਅਸੀਂ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਰਾਜ ਦੇ ਵਾਸੀ ਹਾਂ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਰਾਬਰੀ ਦਾ ਹੱਕ ਮਿਲਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸਿੱਖ ਕੌਮ ਸੱਚ ਤੇ ਬਰਾਬਰੀ ਤੇ ਵਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ ਰੱਖਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵਿਸ਼ਵਾਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਹੱਕ ਮਿਲੇਗਾ।
ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਮੇਰਾ ਨਾਮ ਭਾਈ ਭਗਵਾਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਗਿਆਨੀ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਹਿੰਦੁਸਤਾਨ ਦੀ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਲਈ ਲੜਦਾ ਹਾਂ। ਇੱਕ ਦਿਨ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਹਾਪਕਿੰਸਨ ਪੋਸਟ ਆਫਿਸ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮਿਲ ਗਿਆ। ਹਾਪਕਿੰਸਨ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦਾ ਜਾਸੂਸੀ ਹੈ। ਭਗਵਾਨ ਸਿੰਘ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੱਕ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਮ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਬਰਖਲਾਫ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਹੈ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਖੜਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਸਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ, ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਹਾਪਕਿੰਸਨ, ਅਸੀਂ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਨਹੀਂ ਹਾਂ। ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ, ਪਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਚੰਦ ਮੰਗ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਹਨ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਹੀ ਸੋਚ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਤੁਮको बहुत जल्द ही पकड़ कर यहाँ से निकाल दिया जाएगा। तुमने बहुत बकवास किया है। धमकी दी उसने मुझे। बहुत अच्छा, मैं क्या, मेरे निकलने के बाद आराम से तुम भी नहीं बैठ सकोगे, कह के मैं पोस्ट ऑफिस अंदर चले गया। खबर मिली कि पैनामा मरू जहाज से 39 हिंदू आ रहे हैं। की पता कैनेडियन गवर्नमेंट इन्हां नूं इत्थे उतरन दऊगी कि नहीं। मैं सिर्फ ये कहता हाँ कि साडा हक है कनेडा विच आउण दा। असीं खुले डुल्ले आवांगे, ना कि चोर बन के ते रिश्वतां लैके। ये सारे आदमी उतर जाणगे। मैनूं रिपोर्ट करन तो पहला मिस्टर रीड जो इमिग्रेशन दा कमिश्नर सी ने मैनूं कहा, भगवान सिंह तुसां सानूं बहुत तंग कीता है। मैं कहा, मिस्टर री, आज तो मैं जा रहा है, आज मैं कहती हाँ, हथ कड़ी लगे हुए है। जब भी हिंदुस्तान आजाद होया, पहला जेड़ा जंग बेड़ी साडा कनेडा नूं आया, मैं उस पहला जहाज से मोड़ के वापस आऊं।
case had captured the attention of newspaper editors in both Vancouver and Victoria. The Vancouver Sun editorialized on the need for a white British Columbia, stating that this country must be a white country, that not only British Columbia, but the Dominion at large must be white if we are able to achieve the national destiny of which we are so fond of talking. There can be no question. The BC Premier, Richard McBride, called the situation critical. The communities responded, appealing to the Colonial Office in London, to their compatriots in India, and in the local media. Activists on the coast founded the revolutionary Ghadar Party with the specific goal of overthrowing British rule. Global battle lines were being drawn. For the 39 Panama Maru passengers, time was running out. On November 24th, Chief Justice Gordon Hunter would hear their final appeal in this very courtroom.
This trial is to decide your fate. You, the 39 passengers from Panama Maru. You arrived here on the 17th of October, and I've been waiting over a month to find out if you will be allowed to stay. Today, November 24th, we will decide whether you will be admitted to Canada or if you will be sent back across the ocean to India. Your chances don't look good. The boards of inquiry have already rejected your claims, and on November 14th, Justice Murphy rejected the assertions of your lawyer, Mr. Bird, that the federal regulations used against you were unjust. But the judge did not agree, and your application was denied. For his test case that will decide the fate of everyone else from Panama Maru, it's not here. Here is the prisoner's box where Mr. Narain should be sitting. It's empty. Narain took his chance and escaped from the detention center on Dallas Road. So now, you're on your own. But there's another problem. You weren't telling the truth in the courtroom of the You weren't telling the truth when you talked to the immigration officers for the first time, were you? The government's lawyer argues that you're guilty of misrepresentation. When you first talked to the officials, you said you were returning to Canada, and you provide evidence that you had. But when you questioned again, you said these documents have been given to you in Hong Kong, and that you were doing what you had been told, just for you to get into the country. So the maps and the bills that you were producing were fake. Your lawyer, Mr. Bird, has submitted his final appeal, and now you're sitting in the courtroom of the Supreme Court. Chief Justice George Hunter will preside. Here's your last chance. Maybe there is some hope. Only a few years ago, Hunter ruled in favor of some immigrants in a similar case. 2 Japanese immigrants, Misters Nakane and Okazaki, launched a legal case against the British government's Naval Act that required all immigrants to speak English or a European language. Nakane and Okazaki were arrested when they arrived here and were to be deported supposedly because they couldn't speak or write English. In that case, though, Hunter ruled that the BC Naval Act contradicted the Canadian government's treaty with Japan and was therefore void. Nakane and Okazaki needed to be led into the country. So maybe you have a chance. But the circumstances are different. Now there are 2 laws that Mr. Bird, your lawyer, must argue against. The first is this continuous journey regulation, Order 920, which states that all immigrants coming to Canada must come by a continuous journey from a country which they are natives or citizens. You and I know that this law was passed to prevent Indians to come to Canada. But on the surface, since you did not directly come from Canada, you came from Hong Kong, it appears that you've contravened the continuous journey regulation. The second regulation that prevents you from entering Canada is Order 926. It states that all immigrants of Asiatic origin must present $200 in order to land. And do any of you have $200 with you? Sadly not. Oh, I hear the judge coming.
All rise.
Wish you good luck.
Please be seated. I have reviewed all the evidence in the case and Justice Murphy's decision. Before I render my ruling, you may make your final arguments. Mr. Byrd?
Your Lordship, I beg you to consider what is actually going on here. The government's regulations are designed to do one thing and one thing only, to stop Indians coming to Canada, even though they're British subjects. These two regulations, the continuous journey clause, was designed in the full knowledge that it is impossible to purchase a through ticket from India to Canada. In fact, the government has made every effort to prevent such routes from being established. Surely the court will not allow such an injustice to go unchallenged.
I admire your eloquence, Mr. Byrd, but the court is not here to render judgment on whether the laws are made in good faith. The court can only examine the legal validity of the regulations.
Then, Your Lord, I would like to point out that as to number 926, it is objected that the expression Asiatic origin is used, whereas the statute uses Asiatic race. It is obvious that the word origin includes more than the word race. A person born in India of British parents domiciled there would be of Asiatic origin, but not of Asiatic race. The prohibition in the Order in Council therefore exceeds that contained in the statute itself and is accordingly ultra vires. Furthermore, Mr. Justice, the Order in Council requires the immigrant to have $200 in his own right in actual and personal possession, whereas the statute does not require that the money shall be in actual or personal possession. If an immigrant had the money in his own right in a Victoria bank at the time of his arrival, he would satisfy the requirements of the statute, but not those of the Order in the Council. The Order in the Council is therefore bad on this account.
As to Order in Council number 920, this Order in Council has already been declared invalid by Morrison J. in Beijing 1911, on the ground that it omitted the qualifying word naturalized before the word citizens, in conformity with the amending act. No doubt, as he says, the fact of the change in the statute had been overlooked. And I might add that the amending act was assented to only 4 days before the Order in Council was passed.
But, Mr. Justice, surely the Order in Council might be held in court, in part, so far as regards the requirements about natives.
The difficulty is the word native is used as a noun in the Order in Council and would therefore include persons of British race born in India, which it is difficult to suppose that Parliament intended, whereas in the statute it is used as an adjective, qualifying the word citizens, and it is obvious that the expression native includes more than the expression native citizens.
But, Your Honor, they were also held because of misrepresentations.
But the order for deportation does not state that this was a reason for detention. The only reason so-called assigned, which could have any bearing on the matter, is given as Section 33. This section contains a number of subsections prohibiting different acts, and I do not think it is a proper compliance with the Act to refer generally to the section in this way as a reason for deportation. Common justice requires, and I think Parliament intended, that when a person is ordered to be deported out of the country, the reason for so doing should be clearly stated, in order that he might at least know what was the reason, and in any event, a reason stated in such a fashion would not constitute a good return to the writ of habeas corpus. I declare the appeal is justified and that the statute are ultra vires. The passengers are free to go.
Mr. Borden, can you hear me? Well, I'll try to speak louder. We just can't wait any longer. Justice Hunter's decision on the Panama Maru case has really set us back. We're going to have to bring in those measures we discussed when I came through Ottawa in October. I know it's a bit drastic, but if we don't take immediate actions, the province will be flooded with Hindus. The next thing you know, some Chinaman will start a lawsuit against the head tax. And then what? I know there are diplomatic complications, but I talked everything over with Lord Grey when I was in London. He understands I don't have anything against Asiatics. They come from fine and ancient civilizations. But they should stay in their own country. Canada has to stay a white man's country. So you'll do it. You'll put a ban on all immigration to ports here on the West Coast? Brilliant. The economy is going downhill here. We're perfectly justified in bringing in drastic measures. Well, of course we won't stop whites from coming in. The Japanese and Chinese? Well, I don't know. You'll have to deal with their governments, Mr. Borden. That's a federal matter. The Cabinet's meeting on December 8th. Wonderful. That's great news. And what about the other legislation? What do you call it? The continuous journey or whatever it is. You have to wait until Justice Hunter's written decision reaches Ottawa? Well, please make haste, Prime Minister. We'll need all the ammunition we can get. Yes, yes. And the best to Laura, too.
On December 8, 1913, 2 weeks after the Hunter decision, the Cabinet in Ottawa passed Order in Council 2642, which specified the landing in any port of entry in British Columbia of any immigrant, artisans, laborers, skilled or unskilled, shall be prohibited. On January 7, 1914, the Cabinet rescinded the orders in Council that Justice Gordon Hunter had found faulty and introduced the same regulations with new wording. The landing in Canada shall be, and the same is hereby prohibited of any immigrant who has come to Canada otherwise than by continuous journey from the country of which he is a native or naturalized citizen, and upon a through ticket purchased in that country or prepaid in Canada. No immigrant of any Asiatic race shall be prohibited to the land in Canada unless such immigrant possess, in his own right, money to the amount of at least $200. On May 22, 1914, the Komagata Maru, carrying 376 South Asian passengers, all British subjects, cleared quarantine in Victoria and then arrived in Vancouver. Many in the Victoria and Vancouver South Asian communities, including Hussein Rahim and J. Edward Bird, worked to support their landing. However, immigration authorities stopped the passengers from even getting off the ship. Held hostage with almost no supplies, the case went to court where the new regulations were upheld. The Komagata Maru was forced, under threat from the warship the Rainbow, to leave Canadian waters. Upon arrival in India, the British military provoked confrontation with the passengers, shooting and killing 19 of them, and arresting scores more. Both the Panama Maru and Komagata Maru incidents fanned the flames of the India independence movement. Indian nationals in the Pacific Northwest formed the Revolutionary Ghadar Party in October 1913. Many returned to India with the hope of starting an insurrection. Brutally repressed, many died in the cause of freedom from British colonialism and are considered martyrs. India finally became independent in 1947. Using the revised regulations, the Canadian government essentially banned immigration from India. Families were divided, often with devastating impacts. My husband left Bunga, India in 1906. I still remember the day that he heard from a group of villagers of this new land called Canada. They talked about the opportunities. They said there was money to be had. Work could be found in the sawmills and in the building the railway and the fishing industry. He felt that this was necessary for our family. Our land was mortgaged. We owed money. So it was necessary to look elsewhere for help. And what can you do when a man makes his mind up? You must follow as his wife. He told me that this land called Canada was far away, and I wondered, I could not imagine how far away. Where was this place called Canada? I had not even traveled from my own village. The furthest I had gone was to my husband's village. I was told the journey would take 3 days by train from Punjab to Calcutta. 3 days by train, can you imagine? And then 2 more months on the ocean in a boat. They would stop in such places as Penang and Hong Kong and finally arrive in this land called Vancouver. The ocean. What is the ocean? I had never seen the ocean. मैंने तो बहुत फिक्र पै गई सी। मैं कहती सी, मेरा आदमी ना रोटी कौन बनाऊंगा? Who will make my husband roti? The only thing that gave me comfort was to know that he would stop at the different gurdwaras along the way. In Hong Kong there was a gurdwara, and they would look after him and the others. I found some peace of mind. He told me, "Tu fikr na kar. Ek saal ch main mud ke aa jana. Don't worry. I will be back in 1 year." How was I supposed to know it would be the last cup of chai I would make him for 18 years? I raised my children alone. बहुत दुखी हुई है मैंने। न्याणे मैं कल्ले पाले आ। मैं मेरे आदमी ने सोचती सी मैं ਉਹਦਾ ਨਾਂ ठीक रखना है। I wanted to be strong for him while he was away. But it was hard doing everything alone on my own. Once in a while there would come a word that a villager had returned
faith in God has been challenged. My beautiful baby Bachani, such a lovely girl, such a sweet girl. She was only 8 years old when she fell ill. I still remember the words of the doctor when he said it was her heart. And I thought, oh God, please help me. What could I do? My husband was nowhere nearby. I sat with her and told her stories of the father she never knew. She slipped away. I often wonder, what if we had been in Canada? What if we had been allowed to come to Canada? Would things have been different? Would she have gotten better care? God only knows. Jedi gal likhi hui hai, ohi honi hai. My husband was true to his word. He did send money home for us. We were able to pay off our debt, and we had a nice home in our village. But at what cost? My children went without a father for so many years, and I without a husband. I waited 18 years before I got word that the government has changed the rules and I would be allowed to come to Canada. That was in 1924. I was scared. I had never seen the ocean. I traveled with a group of women. When I saw that boat, I wanted to run back to my village and hide. How could that thing stay afloat? Where would I sleep? All these questions consumed me. But then I thought of him, and I thought of all the other men that had gone before me. And I thought of my children, and the courage came. So I boarded that ship. I became friends with the 6 other women. We shared our concerns, our fears of this new country, where we did not speak the language. The ship was the Montego. 2 months it took us. I arrived in Vancouver. Such a long time ago, it seems. My time in Canada, I looked after many of my husband's friends. They were bachelors. The community still remained small, not many women. My husband worked hard all his life. He was involved in the community. He fought for our rights, and I stood by him and supported him and the others. Even though I was lonely and missed my family in India, I had my husband, and I supported him. It was a struggle, though. If you had asked me that February day in 1906, will you leave your home and go to Canada? I would have said no. But here I am in Canada. And after some struggle and some time, I began to see Canada as my home.
The small communities in Victoria, Pali, Abbotsford, and Vancouver proved resilient and continued to fight for their rights. The right to vote came in 1947. Some family reunification occurred after World War II, but only after 1967 was immigration from India really allowed.
reception, we'd like to just take a few moments to have a conversation. It is with great respect that up at the university, although we pride ourselves in our dedication to learning and understanding, we acknowledge the wisdom and learning and experience of all of you in the community. And it's events like this where we feel that we can come together in partnership and share and learn from you. So to begin with, I want to give an opportunity if anybody needs to. Now would be the time to make your way up. For the rest of us, before we begin a conversation in the whole room, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes, maybe just 2 minutes, to turn to the person next to you and share with that person something that stands out for you, something that resonates for you, something that you feel is important about what you saw, and then we'll open it up together. So just take a few minutes, turn to the person next to you and share what's going on for you now. The story of Panama Maru would set the stage for it. It really is not so. So perhaps there should be an opportunity for opening up to a wider audience. We did have a video taken today, and who knows, the fifth is good. But yes, that is the idea here, is to use performers to tell the stories that are untold, that are unheard, that need our attention. Because we become richer the more we know about our own history. Somebody else. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. That was a wonderful play. I just wanted what struck me, what we were talking about, was some of what we heard in the play you still hear today. Some of the sentiments you hear from the government that's in power in Canada today. Even in the media, you hear people talk about, oh, they're coming and taking our jobs, they can't mix in, they don't speak our language. So I thought it was really nice when you started about whose land is it, and whose language should we be learning. It makes you feel better that maybe you can speak your language out in public, and not always to be like, well, I should only speak English, because again, how you started, whose land is it anyways, right? And then I was thinking a couple of years ago, there was a boat that came to BC, full of Tamil refugees from Sri Lanka who were fleeing a genocidal war. And I remember I was at some event at the Victoria Immigration and Refugee Society, and you had a lot of people really upset and asking us, why the hell are these Tamils coming here and trying to take advantage? And then a lot of the people were put into detention, even children were put into jail from the boat and kept in really, really brutal conditions. This was just 3 years ago. And then, at the end of the play, with a discussion around family separation, we know the Conservative government in Ottawa right now, their base is one that wants to keep Canada as an Anglo-Saxon white country, so they put a freeze on parental sponsorship. So now if you immigrate from I guess, non-European countries, then you want your children to have their grandparents living with them. It's virtually impossible to do that over the past few years. So I guess the point is the struggle continues even today. There has been a lot of changes that have been won, but a lot still needs to happen going forward, especially in the climate of the current government.
I'd like to say that we do gain strength because although we tell these stories of past oppression, we also tell stories of past striking against those oppressions and successes. And it's learning in our own history, as in our histories, as a diverse country, that we have had strength in the past to stand up to those things, and we will continue to. Others, please. What else is on your mind? What stands out? What resonates for you? Or what questions do you have that you didn't quite understand?
I think it was wonderful that you started with representation from First Nations people, and it works into the entire dialogue. And just expressing so many. It was very, very important. I also appreciate that it's the university that did this, or that did this in partnership. It's wonderful to connect with the community and make the university that much more vital. And a very, very necessary member of the community.
Thank you. And I know there's a term that you hear up at U of Vic where struggling to indigenize the university, to become more cognizant and really not just do a token acknowledgement, but find everywhere we can to make the sort of the fire of the university be that much more bright, because we welcome the voices, not only of First Nations, but all of those who are typically sort of pushed to the sides. So yes, this is one of the pieces where we're going to do that. Others, please.
If we as adults are sitting in here, I was talking to my friend, I'm local, born and raised, and what you learn in your history books here, and if we don't know about it from what we've been taught, what are we teaching the next generation right now? When you pick up a history book, you take history 12. In high school, when you take history 8, 9, 10, what are you learning about how Canada was settled? And what have you learned? What are we teaching the next generation?
Absolutely. And if I may say, when you come into resistance, as you were speaking about, the kind of resistance that we heard here today that's contemporary, it's because people are basing their opinions on limited knowledge. So the more these histories are told, it actually changes opinions. Yes?
I was thinking of the unstated assumption in the terminology used, in particular the use of the term white. Because when you hear white or you are Caucasian, you automatically assume that you have the attitude and the insight of the words spoken by them. Now, there is a lot of diversity in the Caucasian community. And I, for one, can remember when there were subtle distinctions made between whether you came from England, whether you came from Scotland, or whether you were black, etc., beyond the pale were the Ukrainians and Polish. I'm obviously from the South. But that subtle distinction colors the conversation now, because our assumption is everyone who's Caucasian thinks in a certain fashion.
Yes.
I was born here in Canada, and I obviously will say I've never felt any prejudice, but my husband came out in 1930, and he felt a lot of prejudice at that time. They couldn't go to barbers here, they couldn't go to theaters here, they couldn't go to certain restaurants, and then I myself, like I said, I never felt it. And then we lived next door to quite a few Japanese families, and it was very sad. It was so sad how they were treated. And the next thing we knew, I was quite young, they were all gone. All of a sudden, they were just all gone. And but like I said, I've never felt it, but I know people that have gone. And it's so nice to, very, very nice to hear you.
tremendously proud of this group, some of whom were very nervous about the idea of performing, stepping up to the challenge. I'm aware that it's a little after. Oh, yes.
Right.
Not at all.
One last thing. I came here today very impressed. I'm taking a cultural diversity class as part of my master's program in the University of Victoria, counseling psychology. And so the goal of that course is to make us culturally competent and aware of the historical traumas that may still be perpetuated in today's climate. And what I wanted to say was that this performance really captured, I think, some things that, we're, with the residential schools, through the head tax, through the team, the and family separation. And I wonder, for counselors today, are we going to be coming up against continued trickle-down effects, even though there's reparations have been made, apologies have been made for head tax, immigration policies have been changed, but are those historical traumas still very much in their mind in the bad case?
Does anybody else want to speak? What's your impulse? What's your...
I think it's still there a little bit, especially if there's continued, the person who brought up the freeze on parent sponsorship. I think there's some echoes there.
I can't let the moment go by without mentioning that this is a payback because when you and I worked together and you were able to help the audiences have an inclination about visually impaired experience, I'm back at UVic just a few years ago. We're more and more helping ourselves understand each other through each other. It's about 20 past 4. We have a reception waiting and we're told that we actually need to be out of the building by 5. So it's my hope that we can continue the conversations one-on-one around some food right through that door.
Break up and continue our conversations. I just wanted to mention that we are in the process of building a Panama Maru website, and on that website we will be putting educational materials that can be used in school curriculum so that we can begin to rectify some of the problems.
How do we find the website?
It's going to be, it's in your program.
It's in your program.
Hey Joel, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, great on. I'll see you around.
Please eat samosas.